Hi, I'm Kristen Bell, and if you know my husband Dax, then you also know he loves shopping for a car. Selling a car? Not so much.
We're really doing this, huh?
Thankfully, Carvana makes it easy. Answer a few questions, put in your VIN or license, and done. We sold ours in minutes this morning, and they'll come pick it up and pay us this afternoon.
Bye-bye, truckie.
Of course, we kept the favorite.
Hello, other truckie.
Sell your car with Carvana today. Terms and conditions apply.
Lowe's knows how to help make your home holiday ready for less. Get Select Style Selections vinyl flooring for just $1.99 per square foot and have it installed before the festivities begin. Our team can help you every step of the way. See a Lowe's Red Vest associate or visit Lowe's.com/holiday install to get started. Lowe's, we help, you save. Basic install only. Date restrictions apply. Subject to availability. Installed by independent contractors. See associate for details. Contiguous U.S. only.
If you've been thinking about getting serious with your money, like actually serious, now's the time. The Motley Fool is offering new members 50% off their iconic stock recommendation service, Stock Advisor. This is the same service that's crushed the market with recommendations that have returned 1,057% since inception, compared to the S&P 500's 180% over that same period. This isn't guesswork. The Motley Fool has a track record of finding companies before they become household names. So if you want to invest smarter and you like saving money while doing it, go to Fool.com/listen to claim your 50% off discount off a 1-year term of Stock Advisor. Again, that's Fool.com/listen. Returns of 1,057% are from the Motley Fool's product Stock Advisor and measured against S&P 500 returns of 180% as of July 10th, 2025. Past performance is not an indicator of future results. All investing involves a risk of loss. Individual investment results may vary.
Had you played a villain like that before?
I certainly played a villain when I did, I forget the name of the movie, where I was connected with the devil. It was with Bill, big star, and it was the Omen dummy, Omen 2, with Bill Holden.
Welcome to The Shabby Detective, yet another Columbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me is Mr. Chris Dashew.
And boy, on this episode, we can finally say that he is the Shabby Detective. This is the episode where he is given the moniker of Shabby. I was surprised. I was like, they're just going to say it. They just say it. They just said it right out. Just right out and said it.
I think this was the inspiration when I chose the title. I was like, oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he does look shabby. But
he looks very shabby.
He looks very shabby here, and I'm going to make an assumption that the next time I see him, he's going to look even shabbier. The shabbiness is going to be really played up next time. I just get this distinct feeling.
The last 2 years have been kind of rough for Lieutenant Columbo, apparently.
Yeah, and then the next couple months are probably going to be even worse for him, I wager. So, yeah, he's back. Boy, isn't he back. Back in a big way, Mr. Columbo is.
So here we are, Season 1, Episode 0.
This is our third attempt at trying to start this show. Ladies and gentlemen, please ignore the last two episodes. I'm just kidding. Listen to the last two. But technically, we're starting the show again. But we're going to start it one more time next time. So this is technically the third time the show has started. Second time.
Our show or Columbo?
This is the third time our show has started.
And it's the second time Columbo has started.
But the third time the character has started.
Right.
In name.
Yes. And this is now fully formed Columbo. There's still a few things, some trappings that we'll get, but this is pretty much the character.
If you're telling me that, I believe it. Because it seems he seemed like in this, Ransom for a Dead Man, he seemed like the character I was expecting to be introduced to 2 episodes ago. 1 episode ago. I guess last time with Prescription Murder. Obviously, that was my first expectation. The time before with smiling, grinning Columbo was not the case. But yeah, he's exactly what I was expecting.
This has a lot of the trademarks. It's kind of strange that he is brought in 12 and a half minutes into the episode and that he is there for this kidnapping case when, as a murder detective, he should have nothing, homicide detective, should have nothing to do with this case until the husband is found dead. He's
really Deus Ex Columbo in this episode. It really felt like it was strange because I watched it twice. The second time I watched it, I was like, it's odd how early, because he's kind of just like hanging around. And when I say he's hanging around, he's literally just hanging around.
He is the audience for so much of this performance of Lee Grant as Leslie Williams and her going back and forth with Harold Gould as Agent Carlson, the FBI representative. And you've got, Columbo just hangs off over at the side. And you get a lot of close-ups of him just watching, like he's watching a tennis match or something.
He doesn't need to be there that early, like at all. I don't even understand why he's there that early, because this is an hour and a half long. He could have come in the 30 minutes in, and it would have made a lot more sense. It would have made more sense for him to come in once her husband's body was found.
I think they were nervous that Columbo might have come in too late, and people would have been like, hey, I'm watching this show called Columbo. Where the hell is Columbo?
Eating chili. Eating a goddamn bowl of chili. Why do you always take that menu, Columbo? You always get the same thing. You always get a bowl of chili. It's the crackers that makes it.
You're talking about my favorite character of all Columbo. You're talking about Bert, played by Timothy Carey.
I didn't even recognize him either time.
Oh, Lieutenant. Yeah.
That's wild to me. I don't know how I didn't recognize him.
He's amazing. He's so big. So in the interim years between Prescription Murder and Ransom for a Dead Man, Peter Falk meets and works with John Cassavetes. And Cassavetes, I think they met on Machine Gun McCain. And Falk realizes this guy's got a lot of stuff going on between the years. Why are you working on this shitty movie? And Cassavetes is like, well, I make my own movies. I do this to get the money, and then I fund my own films. Hey, why don't you come and be in Husbands? And apparently when Falk gets on there, he's just like, this is the worst fucking thing in the world. This whole idea of like ad-libbing and doing all this stuff. He hates it. But then eventually he falls in love with it. And it's just like, okay, whatever I can do to ever work with this guy again. And like, basically this cements their friendship for the rest of their lives. And part of that group of actors is Timothy Carey. You know, he's going to be in Killing of a Chinese Bookie. He's in so many things that he was involved with Cassavetes and Falk. And so, when he shows up here as Bert, I'm just like, oh, this is fantastic. And Bert's going to come back a few times. There are very few recurring characters, but Bert was one of them, just briefly.
Interesting. Yeah, I would say I'm embarrassed that I didn't recognize him, but the reason I didn't recognize him? They don't really ever show him face on. It's always from profile. And what's interesting is because of that, you never get to see his truly amazing face. I'm trying to think of the other actor. He's the guy who's in Naked Gun 2 who gets the hose put in his mouth.
Oh, that's Anthony James from the last episode.
Yes, he was in the last episode. Which he would, but you know what? In the last episode, you see him face on. So I was like, there he is. So man, but I'll tell you what, that bowl of chili, man, it's been a good goddamn bowl of chili.
And I love Columbo just cleaning that table, that pool table in the back. And he's just like, not today, fellas. I just can't concentrate after he's just cleared the entire table.
Man, as someone who, again, this is the third time I'm seeing the Columbo character, second time I'm seeing it as Peter Falk. He's a really interesting character because he's just, I see immediately why people fall in love with him as a character, right? It makes perfect sense. Why you love this show so much makes sense already. I didn't think you were going to have to convince me. You and I share a similar sense of humor in a lot of ways. Like there's always this undercurrent of I'm smarter than you with Columbo. And like, I appreciate that because that's the kind of detective character that if I could write this kind of story, I would want to write. Where he knows everything, but he doesn't need you to know he knows everything. And that's what makes it so great as a character. is he disarms you with his shabbiness.
And she calls him out. I mean, this episode really follows a lot of the pattern from Prescription Murder, to the point of he was a psychiatrist, she's a high-powered lawyer. They both have that moment, they're both very into performances, the lawyer and the psychiatrist, and they both have that moment where they call out Columbo just point blank. They're like, oh, this is interesting how you try to manipulate us with this act that you're doing.
You're a bag of tricks, Columbo, right down to that prop cigar you use. I'm going to tell you something about yourself. You say you need a psychiatrist. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But you are the textbook example of compensation. You're an intelligent man, Columbo, but you hide it. You pretend you're something you're not. Why? Because of your appearance. You think you cannot get by on looks or polish. So you turn a defect into a virtue. You take people by surprise. They underestimate you, and that's where you trip them up.
You know, Columbo, you're almost likable in a shabby sort of way. Maybe it's the way you come slouching in here with your shop-worn bag of tricks. The humility, the seeming absent-mindedness, the homey anecdotes about the family, the wife,
Really?
Yeah, Lieutenant Columbo fumbling and stumbling along. But it's always the jugular that he's after. And I imagine that more often than not, he's successful.
I appreciate that compliment, Mrs. Williams. And I particularly appreciate it coming from you.
And I'm assuming at some point we see Columbo at home, right? Because here's the question. No? Because...
No.
Okay, good.
Columbo comes in to every murder, and then he goes out with the murderer at the end, usually, or you see him alone. And then he disappears.
We never see his home life, right?
He's a mythical figure. Yeah.
Okay. Which is amazing because the person that he is at home is not the person that he is when he's on the case. It's all an act, right? It's all an act, right? It doesn't even matter that he's a cop. He just has to be the smartest guy in the room. If you were to do Columbo now, he doesn't even have to be a cop. And I mean, they've done shows in the vein of Columbo, essentially, where he's the smartest guy in the room. But most of the time, he is the smartest guy in the room, and he's brought there because he is the smartest guy in the room. Columbo, he disarms everybody, but he is the smartest guy in the room.
It's that whole Sherlock Holmes consulting detective type of thing. I mean, you're totally right, because I'm trying to remember, the guy from Jeff Goldblum played a character like that. Rupert something or other played a character like that. The guy from Will and Grace. I mean, there's all these, Monk was kind of like that. There are all these characters where they're just brought along because they are so super smart. But Columbo would never tell you that he's super smart. And he would just be like, yeah, and that's what I love about him. That whole the first time you see him, I had this engraved pen. I can't find it.
I'll just buy another pen.
Yeah, and I'll get that one engraved too. And the way that he disarms Lee Grant immediately, and she's just like, oh, well, let me help you out. And, just trying to humor this guy and be like, God, this guy's such a fucking idiot. What's he doing on my porch looking around for this stupid pen?
I know. It's great. It's so good. It's amazing. It's like hyper manipulation. It's so manipulative, but the moment you see him on screen, you're trying to figure out what he knows. Because that's the entire script, is just parsing out what he knows very slowly. Man, this is just going to be a Columbo circle jerk, this entire show. I mean, this is so good. It's just so well written. I'm sorry, but compared to the kind of stuff that you would be watching at the time, this is so unique, comparatively. I mean, even something like Perry Mason... I mean, look, I love Perry Mason, but even something like Perry Mason feels dull compared to what this is doing. Because every episode of I'm sure every episode of this is going to be the same at some point, at least in setup. But every episode of Perry Mason almost literally felt the same, at least that original run of the show, which this show is kind of in riposte to.
Justice is strange, Counselor. With some people, it's not enough just to be acquitted. With some people, it's also necessary to convince the public by producing the guilty party as well.
I'm familiar with the Perry Mason School of Justice, Lieutenant. It's not a bad tactic. threatened to ruin my reputation by accusation, create a doubt about me. But then there's always the other side. I could always show that you were hounding me, maliciously persecuting me. You're playing a weak hand, Lieutenant. Either arrest me or get out of here.
This episode shows us some things that we're going to see quite a bit of. This whole idea of this ultra stylized setup for the murder. That whole thing of the slow motion, the still frames that we have. There's a lot of different ways that they show the murderers or, just kind of pull out these tricks. And it's a little disconcerting at first because it's like, wait, what's going on? Why are they freeze framing on Lee Grant? And I think it's to minimize the violence a little bit.
PG it a little bit. I mean, that's the thing. These don't need to be graphic. I mean, they're not. You see the murder barely. It's more of an, you see a hint of it. The idea of it. The notion of what's going on is made very clear. But yeah, they don't need to show it. I mean, some of those, god damn, most of the Perry Masons didn't show anything. It was all off screen, for fuck's sake. No, most of these shows don't live and breathe on that. But it's interesting to kind of see them doing something so different from what I was expecting. Again, expectation shattering seems to be a thing this show is going for.
And this is one of the first shows, too, where technology is going to come into play. That whole thing of the answering machine message plus her automatic dialer.
Right. Which is very much 5 years ago in, what would it have been? 66. That was this is not a thing that they would have been. This would have been a thing that they probably would have struggled integrating into the story. And now they seem to have a pretty good grasp of using it in a way that's not just basic. They use it in kind of an interesting way. And then she gets found out in kind of an interesting way as well. There's a nice little setup where he just pops into frame. He's like, hey, I'm here. Just so you know, I understand what's going on.
What cheap parlor tricks you're trying to pull, Lieutenant?
How dare you do something to me? A murderer. How dare you? Lee Grant is fantastic in this.
She's really good. I love her voice. And I just love her cool demeanor.
Imagine her sharing a cell next to Gene Barry. Right.
They would be the crime family. Yes.
What are you in here for? Murder. Who caught you? That bastard Columbo.
Me too.
Right? That shabby motherfucker.
Talking about weird camera things. When she announces that she's got her own bag for the ransom money and they zoom in on Columbo, I'm like, that's nice. That's really nice.
So I had messaged you before we started recording about Columbo's point and fade. There's a moment where he points at the screen and then he's like, some, you, and then it fades out. And I was like, what the hell is this? There's some weird stuff going on in this episode, which is funny because it's directed by Richard Irving. So was the last one, and the last one didn't have any of this. It was pretty straightforward. Obviously, we'll mention it ahead of time who the next one's directed by.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of camera tricks in that one.
I can only imagine, given who it's directed by. The next episode's directed by Steven Spielberg, for those of you who know, which is everybody. And it's written by Steven Bochco, which is realistically at the time, that's a big deal, right? Bochco's a big deal at that time. Spielberg's not, though.
Well, he definitely is up and coming, and I think it's Sid Sheinberg who represented both. Did he represent Lincoln Levinson, I think, and then also represented Spielberg? And so he was really trying to push Spielberg onto anybody that would have him. And yeah, we'll talk a lot more about that next time.
It's funny about the camera tricks, though, because like you said, I was expecting a lot in the next episode, not in this one. Sorry to jump ahead, but it's funny because that was my expectation for Spielberg. For this, I was like, where is all this coming from? Because there was none of it in the last movie. No, I know this is an episode, but it's a movie. It's 92 minutes. So there's a lot of stuff going on that I wasn't expecting, like a lot of camera stuff.
This is that wheel thing I was talking about. This is when they have started the TV wheel. And this was not the first time that they did this, but this whole idea of, this movie of the week, NBC mystery movie wheel series rotation. So I think it was this one. It was McLeod and McMillan and Wife were the three that were rotating at this time. I thought there might have been a fourth, but I'm not sure. And those fourth ones always changed out. Yeah.
So every 3 weeks, Columbo is on.
That's why the whole first season is like 6 episodes, and I won't swear to that at the moment.
Why every episode when it aired is like weeks apart.
And they also had a deadline that they had to meet because Lee Grant and Peter Falk were going to play in Prisoner of Second Avenue on Broadway, I think in the fall. So they needed to get all of these shot and in the can well before that.
Did I mention how great she is? She's great. She's fantastic, right?
She is. It's so funny. People, I talk about the Facebook groups and stuff, and people just cannot stand Margaret, the Patricia Mattick character.
Why?
The stepdaughter, because they just think that she's a bitch. And I'm like, hello, her stepmother just killed her father. Wouldn't you be a bitch too?
I mean, I will say she's not the best written character of that type that I have seen before, but I don't know, maybe it's her getup and her look. I mean, she looks kind of dorkish. She looks kind of like a dork. You know what I mean?
She looks very much like a dweeb.
Dork. I don't know. I understand where people are coming from, but yeah, her dad just got murdered. Like, in the story, her dad just got murdered. What do you expect from her? What do you want her to be? And then she helps Columbo. So what's wrong with her? She helps Columbo out in the end.
I love, though, that Columbo, I mean, frankly, he manipulates her so well. When she first comes to him, accidentally runs into him at Bert's. And it's like, okay. And he's just like, well,
Well, now look, Margaret. You told me some reasons why maybe your stepmother might have a motive.
But they're all true.
I didn't say they weren't. But you don't have any proof of anything. And you don't have any evidence. All you have is your assumptions. You understand? Besides, how could she do it? What would she do? Involve some other people? That would be very risky, wouldn't it? No, you see, the only possible way would be... No, that's crazy.
What is it?
No, it just occurred to me that the only possible way would be if somehow there never was a kidnapping.
She killed him, then set it up to look that way.
Well, no, I never said that. I mean, that's a crazy idea. I mean, forget that idea.
Lieutenant, how do you go about proving something like that?
Oh, goodness, I don't know how to do that. Listen, I think you got a crazy idea there. I think you ought to forget about it.
His stop and start shit? Oh my god. It's like so obvious, but yet they fall for it every time.
Oh, I love it.
Columbo's smarter than the FBI, ladies and gentlemen.
He sure is. Yeah. And I love Harold Gould, but yeah, he's just a complete dupe.
Yep. They're all duped. Everybody but our good friend, Mr. Columbo.
Once that body is found, look out. Columbo's on the case now. All right, let's go ahead and take a little bit of a break here, and we're going to play an interview with the one and only Lee Grant right after these brief messages.
Hello, this is Aaron West. I am the author of the A24 New Wave. In this book, I look at A24's output and I make the argument that we are in a new wave movement right now. A24 plays a major role. This book has a supplemental podcast where each episode is a brief conversation about an A24 related topic, whether an actor, director, or even a genre. As I continue research for the book and conduct interviews, I expect to record podcast episodes with people involved with the company. You can find the podcast at cinejourneys.com or wherever you find podcasts, and we are proud to be members of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. and part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
So, yes, my dear, what do you want to know that I know about?
When you did Ransom for a Dead Man, that wasn't the first time you had worked with Peter. Had you worked directly with him with The Balcony? It's been a while since I've seen it. Really,
really bizarre little film. And at that time, I was still blacklisted. So that was the first, and I had done The Balcony off-Broadway and gotten some very, very good reviews. And, it was a Sartre play from France. And so this kind of millionaire owner of trucks decided he wanted to make a movie out of it and had the money to direct it, although he'd never directed anything. And it was his secret desire, and he gave it to himself. He was a very liberal guy, so he hired me, who, could not make films at that time because I was still blacklisted, and Peter and Shelley Winters and Leonard Nimoy, Jeff Corey, which was a kind of really wonderful cast. Yeah, well, it was bizarre to do, too, because, Shelley ran the show. Shelley had a scene with Peter, and she wanted to, I don't know whether you know about the studio and preparing when an actor takes something very, very seriously. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Method?
The method, yes. Well, Shelley was being very method on The Balcony. And she had a love scene, actually, with Peter. And so she said, I have to prepare. Everybody be very quiet. And I have to prepare. And so everybody on the set, it was a huge set, stood still. And she'd say, you moved. I saw you. You moved. And she lay on the chaise longue where she was going to have the scene with Peter. And she put on this record, a classical record, which she leaned back on the chaise and listened to and whispered and spoke softly. And then she'd say, Lee, I saw you move, even though I was in the trailer. And she made a stagehand stop where he was. And finally, after about 15 minutes of this, Peter fucking erupted. He was standing with the cameraman, and he just went, wah! Oh, I can't take this anymore. And you interrupted my thing. And the director, the truck owner director, just threw the script up in the air till it was flying, hundreds of pages flying over the set. And said, stop it, everybody, stop it. You're acting like children. And then they did their scene, just the wildest, most charming, funny experience of all of us at that time. And then the next time I was with him was on that introduction to Ransom for a Dead Man. And it was really the most fun that I'd ever had on a television show, because I was getting away with everything, as a character. I was just getting away with murder actually, and flying a plane and planning to kill my stepdaughter and dancing and twirling and just having it over everybody because they were so kind of dim. Columbo was, he was dim. He was shuffling around and, asking absurd questions. And, I was flying a plane. I was getting away with everything until I went to the airport. And then, I thought, gosh, this guy's got me. And it was, within that same framework of playing the game. So that it was a very fresh, fun character to do. It wasn't, oh, God, am I going to get away with it? Like I do in, another one. It had a charm and okay, I'm caught. He caught me. And so it was, just a lovely experience.
Had you played a villain like that before?
I certainly played a villain when I did, I forget the name of the movie, where I was connected with the devil. It was with Bill, big star, and it was the Omen dummy, Omen 2, with Bill Holden. I can't depend on you for anything.
I'm so sorry.
Well, you should be. I've never played those goody parts. There was always something dark and fascinating in all the parts, including, the beginning one on Peyton Place. They all had a great bottom to them, something unexplored and fascinating and interesting.
I remember your character from Shampoo had quite an edge to her.
Yes. She was a lucky little rich lady having her hair done all the time. All the time.
How was Peter to work with?
Peter, we also did a play together.
Right, Prisoner of Second Avenue?
Yeah, The Prisoner of Second Avenue, which he won the Tony on, Best Actor, on Broadway. And I have done 2, movies with him, and the play. And we only appeared to each other in character. Peter and I never spoke. It was just our characters who either were teasing or romancing each other in his series, or we were husband and wife, very close, and he was having a nervous breakdown in the Broadway play. And the only time where we were close to being intimate was when our director, Mike Nichols, asked us to lie down in bed in a place underneath the stage at the theater with a woman who held the book for us to go over lines. And he wanted us to have the intimacy that people do who are married to each other for a long time. And the gist of Prisoner of Second Avenue is that he's going through a nervous breakdown. The man is in trouble. As Mike Nichols said to me after the first reading, he's the flower, you're the gardener, which sure set me straight on who the lead was in that play. You are the gardener. He is the flower. So it was the wife's job to take care of a guy who's losing his job and falling apart and worried about the rent. Only it was Neil Simon. So it was as sad and terrible as it was also hilarious. The laughs never, ever stopped coming, which is an extraordinary experience. And it's a 2-character play, so all we had was each other. But we never, ever spoke. We were in character all the time. We never chatted. We never went out, had wine. We never shared a sandwich. We were who we were as characters.
In the Columbo episode, you also shared a lot of scenes with Patricia Mattick, the woman that played your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You're evil, but she's just such a brat.
She was as strong as she was supposed to be. You know, she was a problem for me. She was not an easy fix. She, would not do the things that I needed her to do in order to get rid of her, which is what was so good about the script. Nobody was easy, but I was having such a good time thinking about killing people and getting rid of them and feeling so kind of godlike and superior. And it was so much fun. It was like flying the plane. It was, gorgeous showing him that I could fly.
Yeah, I didn't even make that connection that you get pinched at the end at an airport, even though you are a pilot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I get pinched at the airport. But even so, the way my character was written, it was, okay, game's up. It was an admiration for him and the way he played the game, like a chess game, Admiration for him and the way he played the game. And, okay, you win. It wasn't,
Do you mind if I ask you, you were in another one that I absolutely loved called The Mafu Cage?
Yeah.
What was your experience like on that? It's such an unusual film, but I really enjoy that one as well.
Well, you're a strange boy, You really are.
I'm not going to deny it.
My experience was that Carol and I huddled together and had a little dance. That's what it was. It was a little dance. And I was terribly attracted to the guy while I was filming. And then the day it was over, I thought, what did I find in him? Because, when you take on something, you also take on the feelings of the person you're playing. I'm a method actor. So I was just so attracted to him. And then the day after it was, who was he? Where did those feelings come from?
I've heard of a lot of on-set romances. I imagine that's how they start.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You started directing fairly early in your career. I mean, 1973 you started directing?
Yeah, around then.
What was that like for you, and how did you make that transition? Because you then became a director and while still acting quite a bit.
I made the picture with Warren, and I think I got an Oscar for that. And on the way up to the podium, I realized that I'd aged out, that I was not going to get those hot parts anymore, that like all the other gorgeous actresses before me, much more gorgeous than I was, that I was hitting an age where I would not be hired for the first and the best director and the best script and all of that I had been. At that minute, AFI called and said, we're starting a women's directing workshop. And I fell out of love with acting and in love with directing. I really fell in love with it. And luckily enough, my husband, Joe Fury, was a producer. And so hand in hand, we made one film after another and one documentary after another. And I'm sure you know that when I was in my 20s, I was blacklisted. And so I was suddenly free. I could open my mouth and say anything I want when I made a documentary. I was just sailing. I made one after another. I couldn't stop making them. And I loved them, and I made very, very good ones. One we got an Oscar for, Down and Out in America. It was a great segue from getting the stuff out of my system in acting to getting the stuff out of my system in directing.
I really liked the Wilmar 8. I thought that was great.
Yes, and that was my first. I was still acting. I think I was just finished with shampoo or something like that. And my friend Mary Beth Yarrow, who was married to Peter Yarrow at the time, came from Wilmer. She was a Wilmer girl. And so she was reading in her hometown newspaper that these 8 women had gone on strike in her bank. And so she borrowed the money from her husband, Peter, $40,000. And I said, why don't we go down and make a documentary about this? We were both living in Malibu and talking on the beach, So that journey to Wilmer, Minnesota, where it was 40 below, and those 8 women were picketing in front of the bank. It's such freezing weather that I couldn't ask somebody passing in the street a question because my mouth froze. Those 8 women were picketing in front of that bank. I suddenly was face to face with heroes. You know what I'm saying? And from then on, with all the documentaries, and making the documentaries into TV films, which gave them a whole wider audience, because nobody was watching documentaries. They were on HBO, but they didn't have a huge audience. But television movies did. I turned them into scripts. I made the Wilmer 8 with Dinah, my daughter, Dinah Manoff, and it was a great ride. Joey, my husband, produced them, and all my best friends were the producers of all of them. So I had my gaggle of girlfriends around me all the time.
I rewatched Down and Out in America recently, and it's just amazing to see what was going on in 1986 and just how many echoes there still are in 2022.
Mike, when you just said that, my throat closed, and I could feel myself starting to cry. And I'm just sitting here, looking out the window on West End Avenue at the building across there. And the effect the people I met in that film had on me. I was so grateful that I could show what was happening. But things certainly didn't get better. And now, it's all over the country. It's unbearable. And that was just the beginning. That was, from the hotel to the farmers to suddenly lifting the lid on Reagan America, where everybody was going down the drain.
I also really wanted to thank you for What Sex Am I? It was such a great, powerful portrait, and I'm not trans myself, but I have friends that are, and I think it was such a great portrait at that time, and so even-handed, and really helped shine a light on something that people didn't want to talk about in 1985.
Yeah. Well, it was a privilege for me. I mean, it really was. I never had so much fun or cried so much, but it was so much fun. And, that whole world was so inviting to me and so generous. There was a little scene in it where it's a tall black transvestite says to me, just because I have a dick doesn't make me any less of a woman. And on film, you can hear me say, I know. Because it made absolute sense at the time. That was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And, but how lucky I was to have that experience. How golden was it to meet those people? It just, I'm a lucky little lady.
You know that I have strange tastes already, so I was curious, what was your experience like on Mulholland Drive?
Well, I did Mulholland Drive to see how the director, what was his name?
David Lynch.
Yeah, to see how he worked. I was directing myself. and so many things, the documentaries and making the documentaries into movies. And I was curious. And so I got myself this little part on it, this one scene part, really just to observe, and to observe from the inside. And, it was like such the most ordinary experience I ever had. I mean, I was, just told to hurry up. And when I had the scene with, who was the girl who was the star there?
Naomi Watts.
Yeah, Naomi Watts. When we did her side of the camera, and I stood behind the camera so she could look at me and say what her line to me. She said, "Oh, you don't have to be there. I only talk into the camera." As a method, everything. And I felt, what did I make this trip for anyway? And, make a fool of myself. And that was it, and David Lynch said, hurry up. We have like 2 minutes for this. So I got it from the actor. I got it from the director and went home. But that was fun too, because, you have expectations and it's really interesting what the reality is.
Had you ever done that before? Just kind of.
I did it on a Bob Altman. I did it on a Bob Altman film, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't say the lines. It was gone. I had developed this whole fear. So it was really good that I was directing and not acting, because I had a phobia. And it came suddenly and it stayed. It started in the scene that I had with Peter on stage in Prisoner of Second Avenue. In the second act, I came in and he's out of work. He's in his pajamas in the living room, and I am working. And I take off my boots and my coat and my hat, and I go to the stove and I make him a grilled cheese sandwich, and I pour a glass of tomato juice and I put it down in front of him, and I say, "Here you are." And it's not the line. And it's the matinee, and I've suddenly gone up. And he's looking at me, and I say again, laughing, "Here you are," because I know he's going to save me, because I've gone up, on other things that actors always say to each other. But instead, he turns to the audience and pokes his thumb at me. It was something that actors never do to other actors. It was like going in front of the Un-American Activities Committee. He was turning me in. And so they pulled the curtain down in the middle of the last act.
That's horrendous.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, psychologically. But psychologically, it devastated me. And it's one of the reasons why, I went on set to test myself in films. And I lost. I didn't win. But it totally devastated my trust in myself, which had always been superb. I never even had to think about lines. It was intention, what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. And I lost it. And that was how I lost it.
I can't even imagine how traumatic being blacklisted was. I mean, what did you even do during that time?
I was married to a communist, who was a lot older than me, with 2 little boys. And I had a daughter, Dinah, with him. And, I worked in the theater, and I didn't work in film or television for 12 years. One day I got a call that this director wanted me for a play. I was upstate while my husband was having an affair with the 2 boys and my little girl, who was like, 2 or 3 at the time. And I said yes, that I would take the play. My husband said, "Well, if you take the play, we're through." And I said, okay. And I went and I had my face done, because I was like 32 then. the 12 years, had really wrecked me. And so I had my face done, and I just was gorgeous, as you know. You know, that lift. So I was supposed to play a 26-year-old secretary in this new play. And I went to San Francisco, and I opened in the play, and I had an affair, and went back to New York, and we opened, and it was a disaster. And we closed. And I got my own apartment and took my daughter and started a new life and lived happily ever after. Yes, and it's never been better in a way.
How have you been surviving the pandemic?
I live on West End Avenue in the most beautiful apartment in the world. And I'm married to twins. My husband, Joey, has a twin sister named Phyllis Fioretti, who is one of the great cooks. And she has her dog, Bella. And I have my cat, Primo. And we have our friends coming to dinner in the kitchen. And Joey has been painting, doing great painting. And I'm his muse. He paints me over and over. So it's in the middle of this horror that we live in is this spot of beauty and joy and intention and work and friends and food. And I am so aware of how lucky I am.
Lee, thank you so much for your time. This has been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, I want to tell you, you are gifted. You're gifted. I could not imagine having a conversation this intimate. And I can't remember the last time I did. I can't remember. But your instincts are so humane is not the right word. You are a kind of revelation to me.
Well, thank you so much. It's so nice of you to say.
Okay.
Lee, thank you again. I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon and evening, and I'm hoping we can do this again sometime. It was such a pleasure.
Honey, you got nothing more to mine. I will tell you, you got it all. In an hour, you're a master.
All right, we are back, and we are talking about Ransom for a Dead Man.
This is really fun, and again, like we've kind of already mentioned, we've touched on the scene with the recorder where she gets found out, and that whole back and forth is great. Personally, it dragged a little bit around the kind of the whole delivering of the briefcase. I think we could have done without it. Seeing it, I don't know. It felt a little felt 15 minutes long, too long. Or is that just me?
It actually really cooked along for me yesterday. I can totally see where you're coming from. When I was younger and would watch these, I always felt that they were too long, that they should have been an hour rather than an hour and a half. I've seen episodes that are longer. We'll come to some that are longer as we go along, and those definitely feel a little long in the tooth, but sometimes it's like, okay, as long as it's Columbo on screen, I don't care what's going on. But yeah, sometimes if we get caught up with the villains too much, it's like, okay, yeah. And I think too, that's a little bit where Margaret comes into play, and maybe why people don't like her is because a lot of this episode becomes the Leslie Margaret show of them going back and forth, especially when Margaret starts to reenact the murder and is using all those blanks on Leslie. Then it's like, okay, this is going on for a while, but I kind of liked it.
I like that too. That was the part for me where I was like, I'm on board with this because again, it feels a little like getting back at the Lee Grant character and like showing her like I know what's going on. I'm not as stupid as you think. I liked that part, and I like how they end up getting her in the end. It's very subtle. Well, I knew you wouldn't be able to not spend that money.
When I love that she is such a sociopath that she thinks everybody is like that. And that's what catches her up. And that's what Columbo's just like, you thought everybody was as greedy as you were. Nice.
And the daughter was able to dupe her because the daughter was very convincing, too. She was like, give me money and I'll go away. And she gave her some of that ransom money.
The thing that I love the most, too, is so we've got that briefcase with however many thousands of dollars sitting there, and Columbo can't pay the $1.10 bill for the root beer and whatever Lee Grant was drinking.
The sherry. Do you want to finish your sherry? Not anymore.
I love that he's just like there with all the money, can't do it, and then he is like, oh, can I sign for it? And then he doesn't have a pen. I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, no, again, it further reinforces the mystique that they've built around this character. What about Mrs. Columbo, though? Where's she at? He does mention a wife in this episode.
He does. He does mention Mrs. Columbo.
Is this the first mentioning of Mrs. Columbo?
I think
young
maybe
Kate
in the last
Mulgrew,
episode.
Mrs. Columbo.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Oh, yes. Mrs. Columbo is Kate Mulgrew, is it not? Is that not a thing?
It is a thing, but
the truth from us.
It shouldn't be a thing.
Well,
it's an in-name only sequel. Let's say that.
Sure. Well, I'm sure. I mean, look, nobody ever mentions Mrs. Columbo.
No, you don't have multiple podcasts dedicated to Mrs. Columbo.
If we covered Mrs. Columbo, would we get run out of town?
I mean, we're going to have to talk a little bit about Mrs. Columbo.
Okay, I'm just making sure we are. We wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't, but I think in our defense, I'm sure it's like goddamn near impossible to find, right? Right?
No, some of it is very easy.
Oh, really? I just assumed it was like some of those other one-season shuttled TV. I mean, it would have been if it hadn't have been a Columbo ephemera, I guess. Piece of Columbo ephemera. If it had been anything else, it probably would have been lost to time, so.
I don't think that any of Mrs. Columbo actually broke through and played theatrically, whereas I think this actually did get a little bit of a theatrical run. I don't know if it was in the States, but I've seen things like lobby cards and posters for this. And like you were saying, it's basically a movie.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half long. Feels like a movie in a lot of ways.
Shot on film.
I will be curious to see the next episode and see how much of a movie it feels like versus these last two that have really felt like a movie. Because the next episode's like an hour and 15 minutes. 76 minutes, because they couldn't get it to 92 for TV. I guess 76.
So with commercials, they must have ran this in a 2-hour slot, maybe. I don't know.
An hour and a half slot.
Well, I think it ran 90 minutes, so with commercials, it's got to run longer than that.
Oh, this movie, yeah, was a 2-hour.
This one,
yeah, this was a 2-hour slot for sure. I would think so. 30 minutes of commercials, my God. Holy moly. Well, I mean, there were plenty of cuts. There were plenty of fades in the version that I watched on Peacock.
Same, yeah.
It was, because my Plex server one did not work. Yeah, but Ransom for a Dead Man on Peacock had those like fades, and I was like, this has got to be where it would have been for television, so.
Even the one on my Plex that I watched had the fades, so it's not just you.
But this was great. Another great entry into... I did want to ask about this before, I don't know if we're done, but I'm curious. Are all the people that are murdering people in the show rich people? Is this are they all these fucking rich motherfuckers too?
These are people that can afford their own planes and flying lessons and trips over to Puerto Vallarta or wherever you're going. Yeah.
What is the intention behind that? I'm curious.
I think because they're kind of inherently unlikable. And they feel like they can't be touched, especially going back to that word by this shabby little man.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's like, showing that the rich can't put one over on the normal folk. I like that. Columbo truly is the everyman.
I love that you picked up on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're already 2 episodes in. I mean, the third episode with its title, I assume, has something to do with maybe someone who writes or reads books. So, given that I think these last 3 titles have kind of been, Ransom for a Dead Man didn't have anything to do with lawyers, but Prescription Murder did. I was kind of surprised that the title didn't have some sort of like law angle, trial by ransom. I don't know. I'm not clever enough to write for this show. Link and Levinson are way too smart for me, man. Come on.
Well, and this was officially written by Dean Hargrove, who would go on to be the producer of the show. So you can feel the Link and Levinson. I think they wrote the story idea and then he fleshed it out. And he was afraid he wasn't going to get any money, and then he ended up being the producer for the show. So I think he ended up doing pretty good by it.
If Columbo is as well received as he is in 2022, I think they did a pretty good job, ultimately. Because what's funny is Columbo, out of the 4, is the one that everybody remembers. Not McCloud, not Heck Ramsey, and not McMillan and Wife. It's Columbo. It's Columbo. Like, without a doubt, one of these things is not like the others.
Well, it's really weird because when I was a kid, I would watch these on Sunday mornings with my folks, and they were still doing the rotation thing. So I wasn't watching Columbo every single week. I was watching, and I never saw Heck Ramsey. They would rotate Columbo, McCloud, McMillan and Wife, and Banachek, and then occasionally other things, because I don't think Banachek lasted that long. But those were the ones that were on repeat. So it was the same thing. I didn't get to see Columbo every week. I would see him every month.
Yeah, it's weird that he's the one that stuck out. I wonder why. I wonder if McCloud and Heck Ramsey are just too... Well, Heck Ramsey's like an actual like cowboy show. And then McCloud is like a fish out of water story. So I just wonder if cowboy is just... I don't know. That feels like such a cool idea. Like, how come nobody's like a cowboy in the town? Like, that sounds cool as fuck. I've never seen an episode, but it sounds interesting, right?
Oh, yeah. I really liked McCloud quite a bit.
Okay, so it's good, too.
I liked it. I'm not sure if I would still like it. I actually, when we were in lockdown, I bought the whole series of McCloud. So, because I don't think it's available. I think only like 1 season is available on DVD, and the rest of them you can't get. So I just had to, buy one of those sets that was like recorded off of television. And then Lincoln Levinson, they also worked on some McCloud. I think they worked on Portrait of a Dead Girl from 1970. So right around the time that this was coming out.
Yeah, Banachek lasted for 2 seasons. Just like Heck Ramsey, which only lasted for 2 seasons. Though Heck Ramsey sounds interesting. Gunfighter turned frontier forensic science detective.
That was our friend from a lot of these Rankin and Bass shows. Richard Boone. Yeah, I think he was the voice of Smaug, and he was also a voice in... What was the last one that we covered, Chris? One of those Mouse and the Mayflower type of things.
He was in the Mouse and the Mayflower?
He was in one of those, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. But yeah, he was doing a lot of voice. Oh, I know. I take it back. He's in one that we'll talk about in the future. He was in the Bushido Blade, which is another Rankin and Bass produced one. Yes.
Great. Is that live action?
It is live action.
Oh, great. He's got a great face, too. I mean, that's the thing. All these, if you looked at the 4, Columbo is obviously like the least kind of remarkable looking of the 4, because you have 2 guys in a cowboy hat, then you have Rock Hudson. So, it's funny though, but again, like, I'm glad that Columbo kind of has had this staying power, and it's really popular with people my age. Like, I'm kind of in the minority, it would seem, that I've never seen Columbo before. I was reading a lot of articles ahead of time before we did this of like, Columbo is very popular with millennials. I like these kinds of shows. I'm really glad we're talking about Columbo. I really am, and I'm excited to talk about the first actual season 1 episode at some point.
That one, I've got some stories about the behind the scenes for that one. I'll dig out, and I have to go back and see if I've got, because anytime anybody's ever worked with Peter Falk, I will ask them about Falk and about Columbo. So I don't have that many people I've talked to about it, but I definitely, if I ever see that they've been in a Columbo episode, it's like, ooh, tell me more. Tell me more.
I used to do that with X-Files and Tales from the Crypt. I'd be like, tell me about your time on... And sometimes they're like, oh, it was great. And sometimes like, oh, yeah, I was on that. Yeah, right. Yeah. What's the thing? Like, if you're on Columbo, like, the likelihood is you had a pretty big part, too. Because they don't seem to be just throwing out bit parts on this show. At least not yet. Like, everybody seems to be given a lot to do. Like, Lee Grant is given more to do than Peter Falk is in a lot of ways. Which is also a weird way of doing your show. I like it. I like this setup a lot. This is a very, like we talked about in the last episode, me realizing what this show is going to be. This is great. I'm enjoying it. He hasn't said one more thing, though, yet, has he?
I thought he did in the last episode.
I'm waiting for it to be, like, in, like, very, like, not obvious, but, like, they make a point of, like, stopping when he does it. We haven't gotten to, like, that point yet, because I'm sure they do that, right?
I think it's one of those played against Sam things where he probably has said just one more thing, but I don't think it's as much of a catchphrase as we would think it would be.
This was really good. This was a lot of fun.
He's usually going to catch a lot of heat, allegedly, from his captain, because he'll say, like, you know, I'm okay with this, but my captain really wants to know more about this thing. And so he'll just, like, shift the blame to somebody else.
All these people that may or may not even exist. Is this man actually a cop?
Exactly.
Is this man actually a cop? Is he just a really smart guy who wanders around town helping the police solve murders?
He's like Nightcrawler. He's Jake Gyllenhaal out there with his police scanner, and then he rushes to the scene of the crime.
Third eye opened so much against, like, bad people, against people who are committing crimes. You could just sense it in the air.
Oh, I don't have time to eat these hard-boiled eggs. I'll just stick them in my pocket.
This is like the reverse of every other TV show I've ever been a part of, where it's like, it was good, and then it probably gets bad. My hope is like this starts amazing, and then it just kind of maybe never gets super bad. I don't know.
There's going to be some clunkers along the way, but we're not going to be afraid to talk about them. But luckily, if memory serves, this first season, pretty damn solid. So, Chris, what is happening over at the Culture Cast this month?
Well, we're eating a lot of chili with ketchup and crackers. Ketchup in your chili, man. What the...
I can see putting mustard in your chili, but not ketchup.
Ketchup? There's tomatoes already in it, man. Columbo, what are you doing? What's going on over at the Culture Cast? Right now, we're in the smack dab in the middle of Mike White March, which it's named for Mike White, who I'm talking to right now, not the actor
not
Mike
writer,
White.
director Mike White? Okay.
No. Podcaster extraordinaire Mike
We're going to
White.
have to do Mike White March sometime where it's just like School of Rock, Nacho Libre, Chuck and Buck, you know.
And do you think he would come on?
No.
What if we reached out to him and said, hey, we're doing Mike White March, Mike White, and Mike White will also be there. You should show up as well.
I wonder if I'm even on his radar.
You have talked to people who thought he was you, or you were him, I guess. Do you think that's ever made it to someone else? Like, hey, I was talking to you the other day. It's like, no, you weren't. You think that's ever happened?
I wouldn't be surprised. That would be weird, though.
Mike White, but yeah, this Mike White March, we're not talking about Mike White movies. We're talking about Chow Yun-Fat films. Not to be confused with Sammo Hung, who was fat. Chow Yun-Fat is not fat, but Sammo Hung is. Yeah, maybe next year. When you said Chow Yun-Fat, I thought for a moment you said Sammo Hung for whatever reason.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, no, Chow Yun-Fat, which shows how little Chow Yun-Fat movies I've seen. But yeah, we're talking about Chow Yun-Fat movies, and maybe not the ones that you're expecting either. So what about you, Mike? What's going on over at the Projection Booth podcast?
Getting a little dirty. Talking about some adult films, some films from the 70s and 80s. So, trying to give them a little bit more of the respect that they deserve and just, take them out, dust them off, let people know that there are actually some good quality films, that they aren't all just about pizza men making deliveries. So that's what's over at the Projection Booth, which is available at projectionboothpodcast.com. I want to thank John Walker for our intro theme and Cullen Gallagher for our outro theme. And I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode as well as the other episodes. Highly recommend, if you haven't heard those, go on back and listen to them. There's only 2 of them. You know, it's not like there's 300, 400, 500, 600 episodes of this show yet. And at the end, Well, I think we'll be lucky if we crack 100. And that's the way that these Columbo shows go.
You're getting in at the bottom here, folks. You're getting in at the start.
It's the ground floor of a wonderful opportunity.
Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies. Inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.